Welcome to Soft Pass, hosted by John Michaels, a 30-year veteran tour manager and sound engineer for some of entertainment's most well-known touring acts, and Alan Tillis, a mild-mannered writer and entertainment lawyer by day and a rowdy musician by night. Join them as they sit down with songwriters, musicians, producers, managers, and touring professionals to talk about what really goes on behind the scenes in the studios, offices, and on stage in the entertainment industry.
Welcome to another edition of Soft Pass. My name is John Michaels, and this month we have big news here on the show. Big news. As you know, I've been flying this rig solo for a while, but that's all going to change this month. This month, we're adding a co-host. I'd like to welcome Mr. Alan Tillis, Esquire, to the show. Alan is an entertainment attorney with the Washington, D.C. area law firm Schulman Rogers, where he is the chairman of the firm's Technology, Media, and Telecommunications Department. Really, I think that's just a fancy way to say IT guy, but who am I to crush someone's dreams? In all seriousness, Alan represents established recording artists as well as up-and-coming acts. He's a musician, saxophone player, and a singer. He performs locally in the D.C. area for about 40 years now. He's been on recordings with East Bay Soul and Jolie Molland of Badfinger. I know he sat in a few times with Ambrosia while I was mixing them, and we'll get to some of that with our guests. But Alan brings to us the music fan's perspective and also free legal advice for the show. And I'm an avid fan of the late Dr. Thompson. I think it's only right to have a music attorney by your side on any true journalistic adventure. So with that, I welcome our attorney, Mr. Alan Tillis, to the show.
Thank you. So it's funny when you talked about meaning it's really an IT guy. At my old law firm back in the day of DOS, I actually was the IT guy at that particular law firm. We didn't have an IT staff. Of course, this was 25 years ago. I'm the one that had to set up all the computers and tell them how to do any kind of anything on the computer. I was Mr. IT.
See, dreams do come true.
Absolutely.
We have tonight Mr. Burleigh Drummond. Burleigh is most well known for being a founding member and current drummer for the 5-time Grammy-nominated band Ambrosia. He has been their drummer since the band's inception. He is their drummer now. There have been no other drummers than Burleigh Drummond. He also plays drums for the band Player with Peter Beckett, and he has his own project with his wife Mary Harris-Drummond. Spoiler, she's our other guest, which started in 1994 called Tin Drum, and they have 3 albums out under that moniker. In addition to being a drummer and performer, Burleigh is also a teacher, he's a producer, and somewhat of a music business maven as of late. But please welcome to the show an amazing musician and my friend, the always funny Burleigh Drummond.
Wow. Thank you, John. It's wonderful to be here. I know it took a long time for us to get here, but it's just so funny to hear you introduce Alan, because Mary and I both know Alan, but we know him as a, exotic, erotic dancer. So I wasn't aware of all this other stuff. So, but I think it's great. I'm glad that he's as versatile as he is, and I'm delighted to be on the show.
This is going to be one of the best shows yet, I bet. Let's get on to welcoming our second guest. Burleigh is joined by his wife, Mary Harris-Drummond. She has a musical pedigree of her own. She was a singer in the band Animal Logic in the 80s with Stewart Copeland and Stanley Clarke. She was a member of Jimmy Buffett's Coral Reefer Band, and even did a couple videos with Pink Floyd, which still keeps coming up in interviews. She plays keyboards opposite Chris North along with her husband in Ambrosia, and was a driving force in the Tin Drum project. And when she's not on the road performing, Mary teaches piano and is a vocal coach for students young and old. Please welcome the very beautiful and talented Mary Harris-Drummond to the show.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm happy to be here. This should be very interesting.
Yeah, to say the least. All right, so the gang's all here, and it's Alan's debut, so I'm going to let him kick things off. Alan, you have the floor.
I am so honored to be able to start off. I have known these two folks for probably a little over a decade, and to me, the more time I spend with them, the more things I find out that are just fascinating about the things that they've done. I mean, you gave great bios for each of them, but there's so many more things they've done.
Oh, there's so many stories.
It's just, all the way to Burleigh and Mary touring with Debby Boone.
Hey, come on. Somebody's got to do it.
So you know there's a million stories there.
Debbie Boone is one of the sweetest people we've ever worked with.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, talk about a pure heart. Wonderful.
What did you do with Debbie Boone?
Well, I played drums and Mary played keyboards.
No,
and
I didn't
sang.
play keyboards.
Oh,
I just sang.
You sang.
I just sang with Debbie.
There's a funny story about, going to the airport once. We were late. We were on the road with Debbie and we were driving somewhere.
Oh,
you know,
brother.
trying
I
to get
can't
to the
believe you're
airport.
telling this story,
I
Burleigh.
got to tell it. So Mary's from the country. She's from a small town called Three Rivers, California. Country. Living in the country. Mary had the habit of drinking a full quart of water before she got in a car. And so there was a longer drive than she expected. She had to go to the bathroom pretty bad. She's just saying, hey, pull over to the side. I'll go behind a bush. She's a country girl.
It wasn't a bush. We were in a forest, Burleigh. Oh, my God.
Yeah. So
Bush.
Debbie Boone could not
She could
fathom
not
that.
believe
Oh
it.
my God, you're going to pee in nature? It's like, how can you do that? Just anyway, Mary can pee anywhere.
Okay. Jeez. Thanks, Burleigh.
Oh,
Wow.
That's my wife.
Oh, God.
why don't we go a little bit lighter? Mary, why don't you tell us what bus theater is and what other nonsense happened on the road?
Oh, yeah. When I was with Jimmy Buffett.
Tell us the inside on all the parrot heads.
Okay, so one of the buses was just the band and one was the crew. And we used to have bus theater. It was kind of like charades through the window. So the buses would be side by side and there'd be all kinds of little skits. And some of them were pretty crazy. I mean, like mooning and stuff like that.
No, people wouldn't do that.
Yes. I'm not kidding.
No.
And it was crazy. I mean, the things you do just to stay entertained when you're on the road.
Jimmy wasn't on the bus with you guys,
No.
right? He probably was
Yeah,
separate.
he was separate.
Now, that's not really necessarily a unique thing. I had a band in the 70s and we had two vehicles that we would drive to gigs.
Uh-huh.
I was driving the pickup truck with another guy in the truck and everybody else was in the van. And I'd pull the pickup truck alongside the van. They'd pull open the middle door of the van and also do similar things. And they called it Theater 55 because we were going 55 miles an hour.
Right.
Oh, God.
Do you know what a honey bomb is?
No.
I don't.
Okay, so this is when we were doing in the indie circuit and we were touring around in van and a trailer. You'd go tandem or in a convoy from gig to gig because it was 2 or 3 bands together. So you'd often be following the other band.
Right.
When you'd stop at a truck stop or something, you get those, they used to be 99 cents, the honey buns.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
And you get a honey bun and you buy a little quart of milk. And then what you do is you open the honey bun on one side and you pour some milk into it and you leave it sit for a little while. And then if you're in the front van, you chuck it out the window and hopefully it hits on the windshield, which, it's so sticky you can't the wiper won't get it off. So that was what.
Oh, that's funny. That's pretty funny.
You've been on the road too long when you're doing that.
Burleigh has some good on the road stories with Ambrosia. This is back in the original days.
We'd have a couple rental cars for the band. Inevitably, you'd pull up to a red light, and the car in front stopped at the red light, and the car in back would start pushing the first car out into the intersection.
Wait, who was driving these two vehicles?
Everybody did it. Then the two bumpers would become connected because you go over the bumper and be hooked onto the other car. We had one guy, Omaha, the keyboard tech. He's famous. So he was into building bombs. I know this sounds like
They were in their 20s.
yeah. So what would Ambrosia do on those late night drives? Like at 2 a.m. He would try to fire a trash can from one side of a freeway to the other with a bomb he built. He'd build these bombs. And one time in a Holiday Inn, we were in a Holiday Inn that had, just a single story Holiday Inn, but it was like in the round and it had all these plate glass windows looking out into a middle garden section. And it was snowing, it was snow out there. But he put this trash can, but it was one of those composite built trash cans. He thought he was going to launch it. The little bomb went off, but it didn't go up. It just exploded sideways and blew out all the windows in the Holiday Inn.
Oh, jeez.
I'm just imagining like AC/DC sipping tea on the veranda during these times, and Ambrosia's putting bombs in trash cans and trying to launch them.
Hey, Keith Moon's got nothing on you.
No, it was ridiculous. Yeah, no, it was ridiculous, the stuff we did. Yeah.
Do you remember a very famous night that we were in a Holiday Inn not too long ago?
No.
Well, Mary wasn't there.
Oh.
I feel like I should stop you right here.
No, I'm clean. Don't worry.
It was in Boston. We had just gotten done a gig. We're sitting at the bar in a Holiday Inn, look up at the TV, and announcement Osama bin Laden had been killed. And the next morning, we were supposed to be driving from Boston to New York so the band could do the Jimmy Fallon show.
Oh, right.
So we had to get up at like 3 a.m. to drive all that way. And when we arrived, the Fallon people I thought were just fabulous. And I still say the sound in that studio was the best I've ever heard. Just listening to you guys, Burleigh, play from inside that studio in the audience was just unbelievable. But what was supposed to happen, well, first of all, we saw so many people coming and going in the building that day because, you know, it was all the news. Everybody's going by and they're rushing to get this done and that done. It was a big deal. But I loved watching Questlove come into the dressing room and just do the "we're not worthy" down to you, Burleigh. That was an awesome thing to watch.
That was amazing. All the Roots band. That's one of the most meaningful moments in my entire career. The way they treated us, with the respect they showed us, like, wow.
You can even see it the week before when Fallon announced that the band was coming on. They just broke into Biggest Part of Me.
Oh, right.
The Roots and Fallon right on the show. It was incredible.
Yeah. He sang it.
Yeah.
Sang it pretty good. In fact, we should ask him.
Well, what did Ken have to say about that?
No, Ken wasn't in the band at that time.
This was before. This was a while ago.
Rick Cowling sang the hell out of it. He sang it great.
Mary, you moved to L.A. in 1982, right? Right around there?
Yes.
Obviously, you were into music, and 82 was a hell of a time in L.A. You're talking Dream Syndicate, the Go-Go's, the Bangles, Van Halen, Oingo Boingo, the Untouchables, Motley Crue, Ambrosia, you know, and so much more. It was just exploding. So it was like...
Don't ask her about the red shoes.
No, it's not that. I mean, it was the time to live in L.A. in the 80s. And I'm just curious, could you take us back to a weekend out with the girls in Hollywood, say 82, 83? Was there a routine of clubs like local hangouts, after hours? You know, like tell us about L.A. in the early 80s for you. What was the scene?
I didn't really go out a lot. I mean, I did what Alan's talking about, got into an all-girl band called Red Shoes, and we just rehearsed a lot. I mean, you
were playing all those clubs.
We played a lot. I mean, we were actually doing pretty good. It was just like what you said. It was when the Go-Go's were big, and I spent most of my time doing music. That was what I moved to LA for, and I really didn't go out that much.
Oh, guys were hitting on her every gig. She'd just say, "Break down my keyboards."
So when did you two meet? It must have been right around that time, wasn't it?
Oh, we met right away. We met like within a month. Burleigh and I got in a band with my cousin because they were roommates.
John Wood. Great guitar player, great musician, great engineer, producer.
So Burleigh and I got in a band like instantly together, and we actually got together pretty instantly too.
So this is one of those stories. We're in my house, we're playing, and I had to get around Mary to get into another room to get something. And we kind of awkwardly, faced off and that was it. I mean, we looked at each other and that was it. That was
love at first sight.
That was the beginning right there.
It was one of those. It was. Never believed in it before, but it was.
Yeah.
And here we are.
She's still not sure. But
So, Mary, what impressed you more? The fact that Burleigh had worked with Alan Parsons, or the fact that Burleigh had met Leonard Bernstein?
Probably Leonard Bernstein. Yeah. We got to actually go to his daughter's wedding. So I met Leonard Bernstein. It was pretty impressive.
Wow.
Before I was swept away by Mary, I dated Jamie Bernstein, Leonard's daughter, for a while. Because of that, Mary and I were invited to her wedding, where she got to meet Leonard. And tell them about your bathroom story.
Well, it's funny. Before we go to the bathroom story, Alan Parsons was there at that wedding, too. So that's so funny.
And he was flirting with you, too.
Oh, yeah. He's quite the flirt. So I'm in my little $40 Sears outfit with a little blue hat, and I'm in the restroom, and Lauren Bacall's in there. And she comes up to me and she goes, I just love your outfit. That is just so beautiful. And here I am in this little cheap $40 blue outfit, but it was a nice compliment coming
Let's
from.
just say it fits you pretty well.
Speaking of Alan Parsons, can we just go back a little bit? Back in the day, Ambrosia had a really killer demo tape, which ended up getting you guys your record deal. Can you take us back to the making of that demo and up to where Alan comes in, and then maybe we can figure out who owes who money?
Yeah. Okay. Herb Alford gave us an audition. So we set up on the stage at A&M, and we played, and Herb came in. I mean, we were so nervous. It was ridiculous. I couldn't even get my bass drum foot to hit the pedal, to hit the bass drum when I wanted it to. It was just like doing its own thing. And Herb heard us, and he just thought, anyway, he was kind enough to let us do 3 demos at A&M. So we did a song called Lovely Lady, Holding On, as a country song. It used to be a country song, Holding On to Yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because of the yodel. Well, I keep holding on.
Oh.
Yeah. And, yeah. And,
I'd like to hear that.
So anyway, he passed on Ambrosia. But a guy named Chuck Johnson, very dear friend of ours, who was the engineer on the first album, him and a guy named Billy Taylor. Chuck was working in a studio in North Hollywood called Mama Joe's. And he was playing that demos we made. And a guy named Freddie Pirro, who owned the studio, heard it. And he took it to Russ Regan at 20th Century Fox, and Russ signed us on those demos, the same demos that Herb Alford passed on. So then we began our relationship with Russ Regan, who discovered Elton John and Neil Diamond, Olivia Newton-John, Barry White, a lot of people like that. So we ended up we demoed like 50, 60 songs, like every song that we had.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Who was the engineer? Wasn't there like a really well-known orchestra or big band engineer that was helping you guys out?
Not yet. But during this time, we demonstrated a sound system at the Hollywood Bowl. A guy named Jim Gamble had put together this system.
Oh, wow.
They wanted to hear what it sounded like. So we were the band. During the day, nobody there except the chief recording engineer for London Decca Classical. His name was Gordon Perry. He was there. And he was impressed enough that he took us under his wing. We went to every Philharmonic show that season. And
oh, wow.
This is the season while we were recording our album. A couple stories running parallel here. We finish all these demos, and Russ Regan comes back in. Among the demos that we had was Nice Nice, Holding On, and I think it was Mama Frog, something like that. So he heard all 60 songs, and we had country, we had pop, but we had prog. We had this prog strain in there, and he picked that. He says, all this other stuff is great, but this prog, this, adventurous stuff, I don't have that. So can you give me an album of that? We had recently seen King Crimson and bands like that and go, yeah, we can do that. We started doing that, and so we finished this album, and Gordon Perry is there with us, as we're doing this and influencing us and helping us get instruments. And we're meeting every great classical conductor in the business, George Schulte, Zubin Mehta. That was like our evenings, meeting these amazing, amazing artists and seeing these great classical concerts and performing ourselves in modern. We got to play one of our songs in one of these classical concerts.
Wow.
But anyway, Gordon Perry walks in one day with a copy of Dark Side of the Moon. And he goes, this is the man, holds up the album. This is the man who must mix your album. We're going, okay. None of us had heard it. So we hear it and of course, we're blown away. So we call Abbey Road Studios. I believe Joe's on the phone calling Abbey Road Studio.
Wait. Did you just pick up the phone in California and just dial up Abbey Road?
Yeah. 1-800-ABBY.
Joe,
Okay.
We call Abbey Road. Joe's on the phone, and a voice answers, and he goes, hi, can we speak with Alan Parsons? And he goes, speaking. And it was him on the other line. He was working there late, and nobody was in the building except him, so he answered the phone. So we explained ourselves, and he was coming over for the Grammys, which Dark Side of the Moon was nominated for. In a couple of weeks, he was coming over, so he stopped in, heard the record, and goes, yes, I'd love to mix it. So that was the beginning of the relationship with Alan Parsons. The album was nominated for 2 Grammys on the first record. Some people claim it's the best recorded piece of vinyl in existence.
Some people do, yes, I've heard that.
And then you played on their albums, on his album.
Yeah, we did. While he was mixing our record, his partner, I'm lost for words.
Eric Wolfson?
Eric, what a talent. He used to play in pop bands, and he handled the business, but he wrote a lot of the music for Alan. So he was kind of like the silent partner.
He was a partner, yeah.
Yeah, but he was the partner. We played on The Raven, and of course it was a big secret, so he wouldn't tell us the name of it. We called it The Raver, but it ended up being The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. That Tales of Mystery and Imagination.
Yes.
The way Joe described it to me, he said he just sat there and laid on one of the keys for 25 measures or something.
The bass line he gave us was bum, 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 bum. Yeah, this went on and on and on. We're just sitting there looking at the guy like, you kidding? I think it was Joe finally went, how about ba-da-dum, bum, ba-dum, ba-da-dum, bum, ba-dum. Oh, wow, that's great. Okay, that's it. So that became the song.
Stolen.
And even today, you're doing so many collaborations with other artists. Are you enjoying that?
Yes.
We enjoy it. We enjoy it a lot, but it's a lot of work, too.
It is a lot of work. But, it stretches the band, which is great.
Oh, yeah. Ambrosia and Friends is the whole catalog of everyone you want to hear that's in the yacht rock dimension, right?
Who's your favorite? What are your
Michael
favorite?
McDonald, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Several times we got to play with Michael, and there's nothing more fulfilling than playing with Michael McDonald.
Bill plays with you all the time, right? Bill Champlin?
And we're also in his band.
Yeah, Mary and I are fortunate enough to be...
He's amazing to play with. He's so super talented.
It's like getting an education playing with that guy.
Watching you rehearse with these folks is so incredibly impressive. Everybody just working on the harmonies in particular, it is just a joy to behold. Actually, one of my first favorite stories with you guys was when you were playing and backing Edgar Winter down in Tampa, Florida.
I don't think I was on that one, but I was on one with...
You were not.
Edgar Winter. That was one of my favorite artists to play with, too, is Edgar Winter.
They do the sound check. I arrived for sound check and was sitting in the audience. Y'all did the sound check, go through the songs. Coming off stage, Burleigh or Joe, one of y'all introduced me to Edgar. And I said to him, I hope you're going to play one of my favorite songs of all time tonight. And he said, what's that? And I said, keep playing that rock and roll. This look came over his face and he goes, I didn't teach it to them. And then he turned to you all and he said, do you want to go back up on stage and learn it now? I just thought that was the most incredibly sweet thing from that man. It was just incredible.
He's the nicest guy. He is the nicest guy.
We've just on a cruise with him, and he still is like putting it all out there. He's such an impressive musician that, I think we did a gig with him once up in Fresno or something outside. I think it was Frankenstein, and he has a keyboard part, but the keyboard malfunctioned. So he just picked up the sax and played everything on the sax. And you didn't miss a thing, didn't miss a beat. It was like, he's a monster. He's just a great musician and a great guy.
Speaking of other monsters, when you were a younger man, you had the opportunity to go to Ringo's birthday party. Could you tell us a little bit about that night?
Well, it was intimidating at first because, I was there with all my idols.
Or as Sandy would call them, the monsters.
Yeah, the monsters, right. Jim Keltner was there and Elton John's drummer. Nigel Olsson. I sat next to... Joni Mitchell. I sat next to Joni Mitchell all night, almost afraid to breathe. And so the strangest thing of all...
Wasn't Mae West there, too?
Mae West was there with 2 bulldogs, one bulldog on either side, just standing there for a long time. It was almost like she was made of wax already. It was like this interesting... She looked so strange, like she was embalmed almost.
Mae West.
Joe Cocker was there, but if you wanted to visit with Joe, you had to go out to his limo because he was too wasted to get into the house.
So wait, it was a whole scene outside by the limo and then also in the house?
Oh, sure. It was everywhere. And there was some partying going on. But, I was, poor little...
How old were you?
21, maybe 20.
Wow.
Just my jaw was on the floor the whole night, just trying to.
Did you talk to Ringo?
Yeah, of course. Yes, I did. And that was very sweet because my date who invited me knew him very well. So, we got to awkwardly meet him and tell him who I was. And he was very accommodating. He was very sweet. Yeah, great guy.
Wow, I can't even imagine.
You played behind Marty Balin up at Mohican Sun, another...
Yeah, we did several gigs with him. And Mary had to do she had to be Grace.
Yeah, I got to be Grace Slick a couple times. That was fun.
Whoa.
She can belt it out, Mary.
It was fun.
A lot of people like Robbie Dupree and Peter Beckett. We've played with so many. Dave Mason, Christopher Cross, and all.
Stephen
Bishop. And
John Ford Coley.
What's neat is back in the day, you were aware of them. We were all on our separate paths. But now when we all get to play together to really pull off their music, you have to really play it heartfully. You have to really learn it and ingest it. And you realize how good it was. Stephen Bishop's songwriting, it's just like, it's great.
Yeah.
And when you play those songs live, you realize the power of those songs. I feel lucky that we got a second chance to really play that music and really hear it, and really know it for how good it is.
Whose has been the hardest for you to learn?
Probably Michael McDonald, because I've been able to sing a couple duets with him. And just learning his stuff is more complicated than some of the music that's just maybe a 1-4-5 turnaround, Plus, I'm such a Michael fan, with all the harmonies and the duets and you just want it to be so perfect. It was like, for me, I think maybe Bill Champlin too.
Well, Bill Champlin,
yeah.
Is, but Michael works so hard on stage. I've never seen anybody put out that much. So you want to be there with him.
Like when you're singing harmonies with him and he starts going to, and he starts freaking out, do you start getting like chills and stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I can't even imagine what that would be like, being up there with him.
He's amazing. And then he's come over here for rehearsals a few times, of course.
Yeah.
And it could be 9-10 in the morning and his voice is still so huge and boomy, even his morning voice, it's like crazy amazing.
Yeah.
Alan, one time when I was working for Ambrosia, I was in Burleigh's studio and I was setting up some of the live gear for a rehearsal, and without me knowing anything, all of a sudden Lawrence Juber walks in the door.
Oh yeah.
We're like, hey, Lawrence is here. I didn't even think I had shoes on. I was just free-forming it, just like chill. And you never know what's going to happen over at the Tin Drum Studios there.
So true. It's so true. And there's another sweetheart, talented guy. Playing with Lawrence is like,
oh yeah, he's
amazing.
Fantastic. We're very lucky because where we live what they call a flag lot. So it's in the middle of a block and it has a long driveway to get up to it. We can literally open our door to the studio and play. We've never had a complaint. In fact, our neighbors...
They like it.
Yeah, they like it. They say when we have rehearsals, sometimes they come out and sit in their backyard and have cocktails and listen. It's like they get a free concert. It's wonderful. So, with neighbors like that, you can't lose.
No, we're lucky, very lucky.
It's also interesting to watch you all interact on a double, triple, whatever bill it is, with other bands that you haven't played with recently, maybe knew way back in the day, or perhaps are meeting for the first time. It's very interesting to me to watch that interaction happen and to watch the respect, not only that you have for them, but also that they have for you. And I'm thinking back to, for example, down in Virginia Beach when we did a show with Three Dog Night.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And to watch you all just talking to the band. And it's really impressive to watch the respect that everybody has for each other.
Oh, yeah.
Well, sure. I mean, you're talking about legends. Bruce Hornsby showed up that night.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
that was funny because you all tried to coax him on the stage.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to go. So I wound up standing back and talking to him. And I was trying to coax him too. It didn't work.
Talking with Bruce is probably the most encouraging and inspiring talks I've ever had. How he...
Why was he there? Did you guys still owe him money for a gig or something?
No, Bruce...
He lives there.
He lives there, but Bruce used to play in Ambrosia for about 6 months. He was our keyboard player.
And Joe played with him.
And then Joe went off and played in the Range, Bruce Hornsby in the Range. And he played through 3 albums, I think.
And that's one of the reasons we do the way it is
And so
with Ambrosia.
and we put that in our show too.
That's a great thing to talk about. The songs that people think are Ambrosia songs, but are not.
Well, yeah, Baby Come Back, they thought was Ambrosia. So I had an interesting story. I played, at the big high school here. I did some show, and one of the guys came out, a dad or something came out and cornered me, and he goes, I know who you are. And I go, who? And he goes, I want to kiss you all over. I go, yeah, that's great. That's me. Oh, yeah. I've been waiting for a girl like you. They thought that was us.
All right. Burleigh, you're a drummer. I heard that Neil Peart took everything that he knew from you.
Well, he did, yes. But I got to explain. I mean, we did about 5 shows in the 70s opening up for Rush. And as I was coming off stage once, he stopped me, and of course he had the big setup, and he goes, hey, how do you like my setup? And I go, yeah, I like it a lot. And he goes, I stole a lot of that from you. What? And he goes, yeah, man. He goes, when you were playing all that percussion, the temps and the mallets and everything on your first couple of records, that was huge for me. He goes, I just want to thank you.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, whoa, God just talked to me. What's interesting about Neil is that I didn't see him for maybe 30 years. And then I'm out at the Drum Channel out here in Oxnard, which is part of Drum Workshop. I was there one day for a filming. I was doing something, and then he came in because he was practicing. So I hadn't seen him for 30 years. And he proceeded to tell me, as we were talking, he recited our entire set list from the 70s.
What?
Yes, the entire set list. And then he started in on the lyrics on every song.
That explains a lot with that guy.
Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing. And the sweetest guy, he blew my mind. How literate and how smart and how kind he was. It was amazing. Huge.
Wow.
Great guy.
I was in Las Vegas fairly recently. I was doing a conference out there. Chubby Checker was there. And you'll remember there was the Bakersfield Music Festival that he did and we all did.
Yeah.
You met him there. I met him there. He was so kind. So I reminded him of that. And he just broke into Holding On to Yesterday. And he wouldn't stop. And every time I saw him, because we were in the same area of the show floor, every time he saw me, he just broke back into it. He loves you guys. Loves.
Talk about somebody that can put on a show.
Oh, yeah. He's amazing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about opportunities in the music industry, because they come in all forms in this business, and often they're just disguised as normal choices. But a choice you make here or there could have been a missed opportunity. So let's discuss Burt Bacharach and Christopher Cross and the song Poor Rich Boy and how it possibly could have been something else.
Yeah, When You Get Caught Between the Moon and New York City. That song was originally offered to Ambrosia to cut, and we passed on it. I think we only heard Burt Bacharach and Carol Bayer Sager singing it. I think they both wrote it. But, I think Ambrosia was beginning to go through a little bit of identity crisis, because we were starting to be labeled as softer pop. And when you're in your mid-20s, you have to wrestle with that a little bit, especially coming off the prog thing that we were originally doing, which we always tried to keep alive a little bit in spite of having pop hits. So that one was just a little poppy for us. So we passed on it. And then, of course, it went to Christopher Cross and became a huge, huge hit.
Did you guys feel that you were being shoved? Like, once the 2 pop hits took off, did you feel like the label was kind of shoving you in that direction after that happened? Like they had keyed on to something and they were like, oh, this is what it is for them.
Well, they didn't necessarily dictate to us, demands or anything like that. But they, you could tell they were expecting it. No problem when Biggest Part of Me and You're the Only Woman came, no problem. What happened was after we had done 180 with Biggest Part of Me and You're the Only Woman, we had dinner with Bob Reger, the guy that was really instrumental in us coming to Warner Brothers. And he confided in us that he wanted us to be the prog band that he originally, that we originally were. That's what he was hoping for. So we were like, oh my gosh, you're kidding.
Sort of like a head screw job, like what do we do?
Yeah. And so when we went back in the studio to do Rhode Island, we were of the mindset that we were going to rock and do more of the prog thing, which we did. Of course, before we handed in the album, Bob Reger passed away. We handed in the album to Warner Brothers, and basically the reaction was,
they're like, what the hell?
Yeah, what's this? Where's the Biggest Part of Me? And I thought we had a hit on there too with How Can You Love Me, but the label, they didn't get it. You know, it's funny because that's some people's favorite album now from Ambrosia, but at the time it was just too much of a left turn for the label to handle.
You know, speaking of that album, what was it like working with Ralph Steadman for that cover?
Well, he was great.
Because that's a very interesting caricature that's on that cover of that record there.
Yeah, I thought it was my self-portrait, but
someone once said about Steadman, maybe it was Hunter, or maybe you said it, that he happens to capture people at just their worst moment.
He has the innate ability to highlight the one thing about yourself you despise the most. And he can blow that up. And it's amazing, you know, because he just has that insight into you just being around you.
That's his thing, man.
Oh, it's amazing, and it's terrifying. He makes you scared to be around him. But I got to tell you, we went out to his house in the country one day, walked into this huge room, which is his art studio. At the far corner of this long room, I saw this thing hanging from the wall. As I got closer and closer, I realized it was the biggest rat I had ever seen, with a spike through its head hanging from the wall. And I asked him about it, and he goes, "Oh, you know, I like to draw it as it decomposes every day."
Wow!
You know, it's just a new.
Did it stink?
Not really. You know, when you're around three other guys all day, no, it didn't stink any more than.
You know, you mentioned Christopher Cross a couple of times. Let's give him a shout out because he tested positive for COVID.
Oh yeah, hope it gets better.
Oh, I know.
I don't know if people know, but we pre-record these episodes, and today it's been a pretty rough day. We noted that Bill Withers had passed away today, and
yes,
John
sad.
Prine is in critical condition with the virus, and
yeah,
as you said, Christopher Cross is now tested positive. So it'll be interesting when this episode airs in 2 months to do some comparison as to. Hopefully, we'll be looking back and saying, "Wow, we were so scared back then." Hopefully it won't be the opposite.
Exactly. Exactly. Hopefully we will be looking back.
I want to hear from Burleigh about your dad and the relationship with JFK.
Well, my dad was a head of ordnance for the Army. He was a full colonel in the Army, but he was also a speechwriter, and he actually wrote for Kennedy and for Johnson.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he would travel around with them?
On occasion, he would be in the group. I think they would kind of give him assignments, here's something coming up. But my dad was probably the greatest public figure I'd ever seen. I mean, the way he could stand up in front of all the military brass, it just charmed the pants off him. You know, just he was amazing. Whether it had any effect on me or being alive.
Oh, I think it did.
Did he approve of you wanting to be a musician?
Even after Ambrosia had big hits, he was willing to help me go back to school.
You're never going to make it, Dewey.
Keep your day job, son.
Later in life, he came to see me play once, and he didn't really compliment my abilities, but he complimented my passion for it. You know, it's like a nice try, son kind of thing, But, he was great.
That sounds like an Army dad.
Yeah, exactly. He was a great guy. He was a great guy in his own way.
Speaking of that travel, doing that, you learned the fine art of making matzoon.
No, I got to credit Mary for that because she has the history on that.
Oh, really? So, Mary, how did you... My question is the culture comes from overseas.
From Armenia.
So how do you get it to your house?
Very good friends of mine that live in a small town called Three Rivers, where I grew up.
In the country?
Yeah, near Sequoia National Park. I had some good friends, which is actually, he was one of my publishers when I first moved down to LA. His name is Milton Malconian. His family were amazing cooks. And so I learned some of their dishes, and one of it was matzoon, which is Armenian yogurt. And we've been doing it ever since. And it's still the same culture from Armenia. You leave the last half to a full cup of the matzoon as your culture. So it started from Armenia, but it's just kept going through.
That's why we look so good.
Well, cooking seems to be an ongoing theme with musicians, especially with Daryl's house. What he did it was like a cooking segment on all the shows. And a lot of the musicians that I know are really into cooking. I mean, I know Mary is, Burleigh is. If you're ever invited over to the Drummonds' house and the words, Mary's making her salmon, come out of Burleigh's mouth, the answer is always yes to that.
Yeah, Mary can cook.
It can be a life-changing experience, dinner at the Drummonds.
Oh,
This is how close it came for me. Mary almost made my hall pass come true.
what did I make?
You'll know. We were over there having dinner. I told the story about playing racquetball with my wife. I hit this shot that was the perfect shot where the wall meets the floor. Perfect shot. My wife looks at me and she says, "You hit that same shot, you can sleep with Heather Locklear." And I hit the same shot. Perfect. So now I got a hall pass. So I tell Mary and Burleigh this story, and Mary looks at me and she goes, "You know, Heather was my piano student."
That's right. And her daughter was my piano student.
So did you make the threatening call back to your wife?
My wife was there.
Oh, she was.
That was funny. That was funny.
That's hilarious. It's great over there. It's very much a family atmosphere.
Oh.
Tommy Lee was their student too.
Yeah, when she was married to Tommy Lee. Yes.
And Nikki Sixx.
Yep. It was all
Shut the front door.
totally. They all lived in the same area, and I just go and
They
Way
come here. They come here.
well, that was Ava did.
Oh, okay.
Heather's daughter.
Tommy came here.
No, not for lessons.
I saw him here once.
No.
Oh,
I
what
went
was
to
he
his
doing
house.
here then?
These are just your neighbors, though. I mean, this is Thousand Oaks, ladies and gentlemen.
It's intimidating being a drummer here. I mean, being a drummer here because Greg Bissonette brought his kids over here. John Robinson brought his kids over here for Mary. And it's like, can I practice in peace? Do I have to have the best drummers in the world standing outside while I'm practicing? Come on.
It's crazy. I had 4 different drummers' kids teaching 4 different drummers' kids. I mean, famous drummers.
I mean, after a while, did Burleigh think you were doing it on purpose?
Yeah.
He would go, "Tell me when they're coming. Please let me know when they're coming."
But even today, Burleigh, don't you and other drummers get together and give each other's lessons?
Drummers seem to be friendlier to each other than guitarists always seem kind of guarded. Don't watch me practice.
No, I think it's singers. Singers are the worst.
Singers are the worst. Yeah.
It's documented right there. Both Burleigh and Mary, singers are the worst.
Yeah. Well,
I can say that, though. I'm a singer. Okay, I can say that.
I call it tenoritis. When a tenor singer, their head swells up, can't get through doors anymore, stuff like that. It's horrible.
Oh.
I'm a saxophone player. I can't sing and play at the same time. Was that a hard thing to learn to do?
Well, for me, it's easier to sing and play. When I was in Jimmy Buffett and I wasn't playing keyboards, I was just singing backgrounds. It was really awkward for me. I mean, I could do it now because I've done so much studio work, but growing up, all I did was sing and play. So my entire life, I sang and play. So it was easier for me to sing and play than just sing. Now it's different, but
I like it too. I really like singing and playing. We're not the main lead vocalists in Ambrosia, but we do a lot of projects where we are much more of the singers. And it's great because when you're playing drums and singing, you have the feel exactly where you want it, as opposed to, hoping somebody else plays at the right tempo and so forth.
Who do you admire most with regard to that? Who do you just look at and go, boy, I wish I had that feel?
The drummer for the band. Absolutely.
Levon?
Levon Helm, one of the best.
For me, I would say Michael McDonald. I'd say Bill Champlin, Sarah Bareilles. Are you guys familiar with her?
Oh, yeah, Sarah Bareilles, sure.
Yeah, I mean, she's a great keyboard player, singer.
With Valerie, I've done a few gigs with her in the past. She's really good. Mary, how did you get into the Buffett band? Was there like an audition, or how did that come about?
Yes, one of my really good friends, her name is Bree Darling now, and it was Bree Howard then. I was in an all-girl band with her called American Girls, and she was auditioning for Jimmy, and she said they were looking for a female background singer. Do you want to try out with me? And I said, sure. So she's the one that got my name into it, and it was a very easy audition. He was staying in a hotel at that time, and he just said, with his guitar, had me and my friend Bree and another girl come and just sing with him. He was basically not just looking for the sound of your voice or the talent of your voice, but your personality too.
Yeah, the hang, of course, yeah.
Exactly. He didn't want prima donnas. He didn't want, I mean, he loved what we did vocally, but he liked our personalities and our personalities with each other too.
Do you still keep up with him? And do you ever talk to him?
Christmas cards, basically. Every once in a while, I'll get a message, but with the other members of the band more so than him.
No, he just texted you not that long ago.
Oh, yeah, he did. He just asked me to be his...
He was asking about me, but I mean...
Yeah,
right.
He touched base with me on Instagram and asked how things were going, and it was really nice.
He's really just a former employer, but it's nice that he still keeps up with people.
He was great because, I quit the band once, and then they hired me back for twice as much money the second time. And they were still nice when I quit the second time because it was about family, not about him. He was always very understanding with that.
Must be a million stories of the road with that.
When I was in the band, it was past his party days. So there's a lot of great stories being on the road. People that sat in with us, all kinds of famous people that sat in with us. It was fun.
I'd like to go back, if we could, for a moment to Hornsby. Burleigh, there's a lot of misunderstanding about his relationship with you all. Could you kind of explain his presence in your lives?
We were touring with the Doobie Brothers a lot at one period. Michael might have met him first, but he showed up at some gigs and he was, boasting about himself to us, like trying to, and we all went out and heard him play with his band and he was great. Kind of invited him to come to LA to try to get a deal. And he did. His whole band came out. You know how hard it is to get people's attention out here. I think moved back. I think Molo, the drummer, stayed. So he joined Ambrosia for like the last 6 months of Ambrosia's before we took our one big break. And he was in the band for about 6 months. And he was in a video of How Can You Love Me that we shot, which it's funny. If you go on Time Life, you see these ads. You see this clip of Ambrosia with Bruce playing. They're putting it to another song, How Much I Feel. It's like the wrong video with the wrong song. It's amazing.
That was Dave's work.
Yeah, whatever. And then he went on, it's funny. He got turned down by every label. And then at last a label, almost giving up, and then a label signed him, and then the rest is history. And then Joe, became part of the band.
Well, he was part of the band before they got signed.
Yeah, right. And then they got signed, and Album of the Year, I believe.
Something like that.
Yeah, they got the Grammy. And
one of my greatest honors of all time is being able to stand up with you guys on a number of occasions and playing the sax solo in Biggest Part of Me. The thing I've always loved about it is it's not hard to play, thank goodness. But it was laid down by Ernie Watts. And I love the story you tell about Ernie in the studio doing what, for me, seems like a very doable solo.
That's funny. He did 2 solos that day. He did You're the Only Woman and Biggest Part of Me. And You're the Only Woman is almost an afterthought. One take, done. But Biggest Part of Me, Ambrosia has the fine talent of overproducing everything it does. We browbeat him to death, he literally was on the verge of walking out of the studio many times, try some Coltrane, we're talking to one of the great sax players of all time, and we're trying to tell him what to play and how to play it. For him, doing that solo on Biggest Part of Me, it was probably like trying to get Mark Spitz to win a race with 100-pound weights hanging from him. We tortured him, and finally he basically had enough, and we had to piece the solo together from a lot of things he did. And it came out to be a great solo. I think it's a great solo.
Wait, so was this back in the day where you were chopping tape, right?
Yeah, right.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
So that solo was, flying it over to another machine, flying it back, all that kind of stuff. And so we were lucky to get that solo, and it was our fault because we really, really, tortured him. Yeah.
Burleigh, what is the greatest Christopher North Road story?
Oh, I don't know if I can do it for the public, but
maybe not.
Yeah. Chris North is probably one of the greatest human beings. And the first 2 records especially, he's shown on every record that Ambrosia did, but he was a genius on those first 2 records. So
he has some pretty famous solos.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Yeah. A lot of organ players respect him for his style. It's pretty good. He's one of a kind.
Mary, do you just sometimes want to show him up, like pull the lighter fluid out and just do a solo, light the keys on fire and just walk off? And just like right after he tips his organ up and does his thing, Because what can you do? The roadie would have to run out and hit it with the fire extinguisher. Joe's hair would be all full of white stuff. Ken would freak out. You'd stop the show. No, I'm just kidding.
We're definitely different kinds of keyboard players, that's for sure.
Back in the day when it was a real B3, he uses an XK3 now, but the plastic keys, he would play so hard that he would break those things. And what happens when you break an old B3 key, it sticks up. It pops up. So you have this kind of jagged, many nights you look over at the keyboard and it'd be covered in blood. The keys would be red because he'd slice his hands while he was playing. If a key broke, that wouldn't stop him,
Didn't he used to push the B3 off the stage?
No, he didn't do that. But, when he got the XK3, he'll start wrestling with it on stage, and turning it side. Oh, it's unbelievable. He'll turn it sideways. So a lot of times now it's backline. An instrument company provides the backline for you. The equipment guy is not aware that this is what Chris does. And he'll be out there trying to protect the keyboard and Crystal. Now Chris is not only wrestling with the keyboard, he's wrestling with the roadie at the same time. And it's great show. It's fantastic show. Everybody's got to see it one time in their life.
There's never a dull moment at the Ambrosia shows, I'll tell you that.
That's true. Yes.
And backstage, too. I mean, just hanging out backstage, not just with stories, but when Rick was in the band, he would keep trying to show his knowledge of 70s music and try to stump the rest of us. And his favorite song was Chevy Van by Sammy Johns, of all things. And just those kinds of things going on backstage is just a pleasure to watch and have the honor of occasionally participating in.
It's fun. We're all cut from the same cloth. We know more of each other now than we ever did. So it's fun that we get to share the music together.
With a lot of these package shows that we do, it's really a family atmosphere. I mean, it's not uncommon to see Burleigh come out and play drums for Al Stewart during his set, for Peter Beckett to come out and sit in on a song with Little River Band. Well, I don't know if that would happen anymore, but those kind of things are very common. It does seem to show some generational gap between the 60s and 70s acts and the 80s and 90s acts, because you don't see a whole lot. With the older generation of acts, I'm seeing that everybody seems to know each other from gigging or from playing in the studios, and everybody's only a degree away from knowing someone else. As you move down generationally, it doesn't seem to be so tight in the community.
Yeah, I actually think it's a little bit of a throwback to, a couple of decades before us, like the Jazz Cats, who were always playing with each other. I think maybe in the 60s, a lot of those bands didn't play their own music. It was produced for them. Then you get into our generation, and there was still a lot of that going on, the Wrecking Crew kind of guys, but bands started playing. And a lot of bands, they were self-contained. They did their own recording. So therefore, we were good enough that we could merge with other people and play with other bands and all kinds of stuff like that. I got to say, Ambrosia is, I think, one of the best bands at doing that. We really take it upon ourselves to be convincing when we play with another artist.
That's what I was saying earlier. Just watching you all rehearse vocals is just amazing. I remember one of the Denny Lane shows, sitting watching you doing the vocals, and awesome to watch you guys being able to swap around parts like that and just make it sound tremendous.
Well, Mary's so great because she's a vocal arranger and she can just dictate on the spot. You take this, you take this, you take this. Okay, here we go.
It's a lot of work backing these people, especially getting back to Al Stewart, because You're the Cat. I mean, that's quite a piano thing. And there's some of us in the band that do most of the charting and vocal arrangements and stuff than others. And so
Burleigh doesn't do that?
No, Burleigh's one of the hard workers. I'm not going to say any names, but I have to help give people a lot of their parts in some of these acts. So it is a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun too. It's great.
We're actually getting to the point where we'll have to wrap up, but I do have one more question for you, which is pretty pertinent to your pedigree. Last month, Deborah Holland said that Animal Logic was in the process of making a new record. What was that like back in the early 80s with those two monsters on stage together?
It was great. It was fantastic, but it was a little bit of a tug of war between Stanley and Stewart, because Stewart's kind of a freelance drummer to where he'd start off one tempo and end up in quite a bit faster tempo.
He was a rocket ship. But
exactly.
He was adrenaline.
And Stanley Clarke is more schooled,
even paced.
right, jazz kind of guy. But it worked. It worked. It was so much fun, and they were such wonderful people to play with. I got to be close with all of them, and it was so much fun. It was great.
That was post Police, right? Or during?
Yes.
No, post.
It was post. Police.
Post. Okay, so was Sting and Andy, were those guys hanging around ever?
No, not at all. I don't even, oh my gosh, Stewart had some stories about that. I mean, they hated each other at that time, especially Stewart and Sting. They literally tried to push each other out of a plane one time.
What?
Yes, that's what's...
Well, not while it was in the air, I hope.
No, yes, when it was in the air, a small plane.
Oh.
That's how much they hated each other.
So we have to spill the beans on Debbie Holland, Deborah Holland. Mary and I, one of the first bands we were in, Ambrosia was on a break. With Michael Thompson, we became the band for Deborah Holland called Debby and the Dynamics. We'd play all the bars around town. We had a lot of fun. That was kind of Mary, and we were courting each other at the time. And
that's how we met Debbie, and that's how we met Michael Thompson. He was in the band too.
Debby and the Dynamics. That's one of the all-time great bands.
I meant to ask before, when I was talking to you about the whole first demo tape and all that, if I recall right, there was a point in time where you guys would kind of work all day in the studio, and then at night you would go play at a gay bar, right? In L.A.?
Female gay bar. Yeah. The Hialeah House.
Okay.
And that's where we really learned how to play.
Was that a normal thing to do in L.A.? Like, was it all, any place you could have live music, they had it? Or
well, there was a lot more live music in that day. But we were lucky because not only was it a great education, and that's where all our R&B roots kind of really started, which really came out later.
So you were playing covers there?
Yeah, but a lot of stuff we made up on the spot. It was a far cry from our prog stuff. They wanted to dance. So that's where we started learning how to play, Biggest Part of Me grooves and Al Green and all that stuff. It was a big learning experience. In a lot of ways.
Reading a crowd, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Is there somebody you've always wanted to play with?
That it's still alive, you mean?
Yeah.
I am excited mostly about playing with my family now because we have the family band, the Tin Drum Family Band, and our daughter and our son and Mary, of course. And that's probably the most exciting thing for me right now.
We just did a live streaming thing because we couldn't do a gig together, a tin drum gig at a place called Bogies because of the quarantine thing. Now we're all here. And so today we actually worked up a song that I had written for Mickey when he was in India years and years ago. Sierra's playing guitar, Mickey's playing bass, Burleigh's drums, me keyboard singing, and it was a blast.
Yeah, so we trade instruments on occasion, and it's the most...
For those who don't know, Burleigh and Mary's son, Burleigh Jr., who we call Mickey, is also an accomplished drummer, and he plays with a pretty famous Everly Brothers tribute band, right?
The Everly Brothers Experience.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And they are phenomenal.
They tour all the time.
So
he's been on the road. He's been to similar venues, because I remember seeing that one place that we played, there was a picture of his band next to an Ambrosia poster. So he's
exactly.
played some of the same venues. So I got a question, because we had Dave Anderson from Atlanta Rhythm Section on the show couple episodes ago, and he has a son, Stone Anderson, who's also a guitar player and has kind of followed in the musical footsteps. He's found it hard to break out of the shadow. Has Mickey had any of that kind of stuff? Like, is he known more as Burleigh Drummond's son, or has he not had to deal with any of that kind of stuff?
I think he may have had to deal with it, but he claims his own. And he definitely is his own man out there, and he's getting offers from great bands to come play. Not at the moment, because nobody's touring at the moment, but he's had wonderful offers. His name's getting around, and people are touting his skills. So,
do you see similar things in his playing that inherently that you do too?
I'll just put it this way: he's the new improved model. Okay, let's just leave it at that.
He's going to be playing drums for Ambrosia soon.
Well. Maybe someday.
I understand what you mean by the proud papa moment. I think that's huge. And I want to thank you for giving me my proud papa moment when in Chicago you let my daughter sit in.
Oh, yes. Right.
Mary wasn't at the show at that point. You let my daughter do the harmony vocals, and being on stage with my daughter was absolutely the ultimate high. And I thank you so much for that.
Yeah, there really is nothing more rewarding than that, and in my book.
Well, before we wrap it up, we save the best or maybe the worst for last. I got to ask this question. I don't know if I'll get an answer, but I have to ask it. You know, I worked for your band, and I get asked this question a lot, and it's often not from fans. It's usually from other musicians or people in the industry. They ask about the parting of ways with Dave, and I can never give them an answer because I really don't know. It's clear that the band's moved on without him. Can you at all give any resolution to that question as to why there was that parting of ways? And if you don't want to get into it, I respect that. But I just, I got to ask.
His attorney might keep him from doing it.
Yeah.
So, Alan, just mute me when you need to. Yeah, so Ambrosia took a break around 83 and 82 because the working relationship with our manager and everything, it just got to the point where it wasn't working and we needed the break. And it was the best thing that could have happened to me because I met Mary. That's when I feel like my real life really started. And we had kids, and all of a sudden I really had a life I could call my own. After about 6 years, Dave actually called the band to get back together. We kind of piece by piece put it back together and we started playing. And actually, Dave was kind of the impetus for putting it back together.
So this is like the late 80s when this happened?
Late 80s.
89.
And then Dave would get these producing gigs. So, he wouldn't be able to make a gig here and there. And sometimes it got hard because it would be like the day before a show. And it started happening to the point where we had to keep subbing him out. And then finally, it was just better for the band to put a band that could be counted on to be there, to have any kind of stability and presence. We had to guarantee what we could perform. So Dave had to step away. But that's the band that has grown into the Ambrosia today through many twists and turns. And Mary has become a huge part of that.
Okay.
That's what happened. And it's not to say Dave is probably one of the most talented musicians I've ever played with. And all due credit to Dave. He wrote amazing music, and it was a golden period time that we had together. And I'm not saying that we'll never do something in the future, but that's what happened, and that's where Ambrosia is today. Dave was a huge part of the band, and his music still is. I think you have to gather up the pieces and go on, and that's what we did. And actually, I think the band sounds as good or better than it ever did. So I have no qualms about playing in Ambrosia and who it is. I'm really happy with the way the band sounds. So.
And for those people who want to check out more about Ambrosia or possibly get a touring schedule when hopefully things will start up again at some point, you have a website for the people?
AmbrosiaLive.net. I think is the best.
It's the best we got right now.
The best way. It's good. It stays on top of it.
And then people can find out about what's been going on with the band. There's photos, bios. I think there's some videos up there too, right?
Sure. Videos. There's the tour schedule. There's merchandise. There's pretty much everything.
It's a regular band website.
Well, guys, I hope that things get back to normal and that you resume your normal touring schedule. And until then, you have all the time in the world to spend with your family and make music and do live broadcasts and do podcasts with me. And I just want to thank you for taking the time tonight to sit down with me and Alan and share a bunch of these pretty hilarious stories. And
you guys have been great.
And it was great.
Our pleasure.
John, Alan, we love you guys. And I hope you stay safe and hope we see you again very, very soon.
Yes.
Burleigh and Mary, thank you for taking the time. Soft Pass is a Wiggle the Wire audio production. We'd like to thank our bus drivers, Kent C. Straight and Miles to Go, our audio advisors, Microphone and Stereo Blaren, music supervisor, Dan Saul Knight, studio lights by Annie Position, our house electrician, Maxwell Power, our monitor engineer, Tad Moore, our backline supervisor, Anita Fender, our booking agents, Doris Shutt and Lois Price, our joke writers, Daryl B. Payne and Eaton Crow, John and Alan's IT specialist, Dale Never Know, our public relations agent, Jacqueline Hyde, our travel agents, Lisa Carr and Minnie Van Gogh, Alan and John's makeup girls, Barbara E. Dahl and Barbara Seville, Alan's wife, Mary A. Richmond Tillis, and our broadcast producer, Nick O. Time. For Alan Tillis, I'm John Michaels saying thanks for listening.
This has been Soft Pass. Find us on Facebook at Soft Pass Podcast. Special thanks to Blue Microphones and the law firm of Schulman Rogers. Theme music by the Sam Yannis Band. Join us again next time for more stories about the entertainment industry.